Camera movement is something that can add a lot of production value to your music video. And when you're working on especially on these low budget music videos, production value is something you should be striving for. That's one of the ways to make your final product look a lot bigger and just a lot more expensive. The most common way to add camera movement is to just take the camera and handheld it. Too many times I see music videos where the lighting, for example, or the location is really nice, but the camera just sits there the whole time, for the whole music video. And as nice as it looks, after watching that for a few minutes, just basically gets boring. And not to mention that a camera movement can also add a lot of depth and just make your shots look like they have a lot more dimension. Especially when when you see, for example, some foreground objects passing and moving at a different speed relative to the subject and then the background. So I would really encourage you to just take your camera off the tripod and just try moving it around and just see what kind of effects you can get, even if all you can do is just do handheld shots. If you want to achieve smooth camera movement, then there's a few low budget ways to achieve that. First is to just handhold the camera and then later on apply a warp stabilizer effect, which comes now standard with Adobe CS6, Premiere, and After Effects. And it will literally sometimes make it look like the camera is sort of gliding, like as if it's on a Steadicam or on let's see if you move it up and down, like if it's on a crane.
So here's a few clips that I shot here of my brother just basically standing and moving the camera around him, and as you can see, it's very shaky. It's just all handheld, and first shot is just the camera is going around him. Then next shot is camera's kind of going from his feet up and then down again to his feet. And last shot is I'm kind of doing like a dolly and just moving in closer on his face. Now here's kind of how it's gonna work. So basically, if you're in Adobe Premiere CS6, or also if you have Adobe CS 5.5, then you will not have this option available in Premiere, but you will have it in the After Effects program. Anyway, so we'll take the first clip here and just go to our effects control. Here, look for the effects, video effects, go distort, and under distort you find an effect called warp stabilizer. Just drag and drop it here, and right away it's going to tell you it's analyzing, and that's basically the first step that it does. What it basically does is it looks at your whole clip up here that you have in your timeline, and it's going to analyze the motion of it, and based on that it's going to apply the stabilization effect. And I'll apply it to the other clips too, the other two clips here and here, and right now they're all going to be analyzing. Okay, so now that it's done, you can see up here it's stopped calculating and doesn't say anything up here. We can just pretty much play it back, and that's all you really have to do is just apply effect, wait for it to calculate, and that's it. And this is how the shot looks afterwards with the effect. So as you can see, it's smoother. That's one thing. There is sometimes weird distortion, and I mean, there's moments where it looks beautiful, and some moments where it kind of skews the image, and that's because I'm shooting on a digital SLR, so it has a lot of rolling shutter, especially when you have a really shaky shots. Now the second shot, you can see it looks a lot better. That's because I wasn't walking with the camera really, I was just lifting it. And here this one also looks a lot better, just because I was trying to keep it as smooth as I could. So really what I would say is if you're going to be doing stuff, I mean, like I said, if you look at this first shot, how it looked before, and then now how it looks afterwards with the effect, I mean, it's a huge difference. But still, just because you can use this effect, try to record it as smoothly as you can. So as you can see, I was not recording it smooth. Like I was just walking with it, carelessly, and the camera was jumping all over the place. And it still managed to fix it. But obviously, if you're going to start with a smoother image, a video, then you're going to end up with an even better effect after applying this. Now, another thing you want to keep in mind though is that, as you'll notice, all these shots, the camera is basically now, the composition is basically a lot is changed, simply because what the warp stabilizer does to basically stabilize the shot is it has to sort of zoom in a little bit into the shot to give it room to basically counter the camera movement, the shake. So that's why when you're shooting basically footage that you know you're going to stabilize later, you want to keep in mind that all your image is going to be kind of end up kind of cropped in a little bit more, zoomed in. So when you were framing your shots, like example here, you can see I zoomed in really close on his face, and without the effect, it looks basically it's a little bit wider. So just make sure you frame your shots a bit wider. And also another good thing to keep in mind is to always try to shoot with really high shutter speed, so like as high as you can, so that well, maybe not too high, but I mean I would say like these shots were shot around 1,000th of a second, maybe 1/500th of a second might still do, but you don't really want to go lower than that. And the reason is because when you're shooting with frames, of like 1/100th of a second or 1/50th of a second, for example, then and the camera is shaking, then you're gonna have a lot of motion blur from the camera shake. And then afterwards, when you stabilize those shots, even though you can actually stabilize them, the shots themselves are gonna look blurry, because the one thing that the plugin can't do is the warp stabilizer can't remove is the blur in your frames. So those are, I would say, the two things to keep in mind if you're going to use the warp stabilizer. Frame your shots wider, and also make sure that you're shooting at a high frame rate. I would say at least 500 frames, if 1/500th of a second. So if you're shooting, let's say, at night or indoors with artificial lighting, you might not always be able to do that if you don't have enough light. So that's like I would say the limitations of it. But otherwise, it works pretty well.
Another way is to put the camera on a dolly, and again, you can build your own. Like I said, I built mine for around $120, and honestly, it was one of the best investments I probably could have made. I never have to worry about having to rent a dolly, and I've used my dolly for the last 4 years on all sorts of projects, from short films to music videos and even TV commercials. You can also buy different camera sliders online that are sort of like a mini dolly. Those cost anywhere from $100 to $400. Depends really what you get and from what company. Here's a cheap one that I got for around $100, and it works great. Another way to add camera motion is by using a Steadicam, or another form of stabilizer, such as, for example, the GlideCam series. And those can, they can produce amazing results, but I just usually find that they're not really what I like using, simply because it takes a long time to first balance the camera on a Steadicam, for example. And then once you balance it, it's you don't really want to take it off the camera off of it and, let's say, put it back on your tripod, because again, each time you take it off and then put it back onto it, you gotta again recalibrate it and make sure that it's it's just perfectly balanced. And so just because of that, I find that you end up wasting too much time calibrating the Steadicam. Really, at the end of the day, it's going to restrict you from quickly shooting. And when you're doing a low budget music video, that's the last thing you want.